to me. If you want to send your questions to me, I can then forward them on to Chad and get the answers back to you. I did finally remember to start the recording. So again, I want to welcome and thank Nicole Stanley and FESA for helping to sponsor this. And with that, Chad, I will turn it over to you.
All right. Thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me, everyone. I appreciate being on and the opportunity to touch base on the new SWICs. It's been a work in progress. So we're glad to see it across the finish line. And also in your honor, you may not can see it, I wore my postal polo. That's from when I was a postmaster a while back. So I did want to support the postmaster group. So again, thanks for having me on. So let me go ahead and get started, and then we'll again, like Dan said, if you want to work in questions, it will be fine to take those on. The presentation isn't that long. It'll probably take longer to do the SWICs, but so we have plenty of room for Q&A, so I'll hopefully can answer any questions you have. Okay. All right. Can everybody see my screen?
You are working.
Good. Okay. All right. Good deal. I wanted to touch base on the SWIC, the new SWICs and the changes, enhancements to the SWICs, and then also at the end I'll touch on hard stops and how you may not see them, but the district may see a hard stop when you can't get a job posted, and it will affect you. But I want you to see how those are addressed, or if you get questions from the district, or you ask, hey, why did my job post? This maybe will hopefully answer some of those questions as well. Okay, the first thing I want to show you, this is just part of the memo that actually went out to the field, noting that, hey, we have a new SWICs. It was effective April 1st. We actually, field staffing, our team, we put together all the authorizations, so they were in place on April 8th. And so I just wanted you to get a feel that we did roll out a bit, there was a major messaging out on it, so everyone knew it was coming. Here's the part you're really wanting, right? This is the changes. First of all, the rural part of it changed from route credit to people credit, if you will. And so what happens now is with a full-time carrier or a PTF carrier, you're getting 1.25 credit before you just got 1.25 credit for a route or a PTF. And you get credit for your working RCAs and ARCs. That's at 0.40 credit. So that's a benefit. That that may behoove you to make sure you got your staffing up to speed too. So it'll help you both ways. Credit for PMRs, those of you that have RMPOs, you'll get a 0.2 credit for those. Now, granted, if it's an RMPO 4, that's gonna, if those ever vacate, when they do vacate, those become a clerk, you would actually get better credit in the long run for those as soon as they vacate those. The contract custodians, that's new, that's an auto feed. In the past, you had to manually enter that you had a contract custodian, and some small offices weren't even aware that they had that credit and didn't credit themselves for that. So now we've got that as an auto feed. So that'll go in there, and that's I should have put that on there. That's 0.33 credit for that one. It's not a new credit, it's just the fact that you don't have to go in and add that one yourself. The Sunday operations, if you have Sunday operations, that's a credit at 2.64. And the next one is for their larger offices. It's credit for complex duties and associated with larger installations. And you don't have to read a lot into the part where it's just complex duties, or, it's really, the driver for this one is for every 15 supervisors you earn, you get an extra supervisor or an additional supervisor. In the past, that ratio was 35-1. And so you didn't, unless you were a large PC's postmaster office or maybe a 26, you just never saw this factor never applied to a smaller office. Now, since we've enhanced that, that's increased. That affected around 226. I think we've added 226 supervisors from that alone. In the past, it was only like 60. So that was a great enhancement for the field. And the thing I want to stress on that, because we do get a lot of questions on this one. This is based on how many supervisors you're authorized. That's what drives this one, not your total staffing or carriers or clerks. It's how many supervisors. So if you're authorized 14 supervisors, you wouldn't get an extra. But if you were authorized 15, you would get one extra. The next one, the number 6, that was something we actually implemented last year towards the end of the summer, where there was a requirement at one time, and again, this was usually a larger office, that if you had an SCSS, Supervisor Customer Service Support, you had to exchange a supervisor for that. So it was really a 1-for-1. Well, we took that requirement away last year, and then that immediately freed up a lot of supervisor positions that they were exchanged out. So they gained those supervisors back. Number 7, the workbook is updated to remove pre-career employees with 0 work hours. That's a change. In the past, the SWIX model brought in every employee you had. And then the district would vet it, we would vet it, and we would have to remove pre-career employees that weren't working. They don't have any work hours, we would take those off. Now that automatically pulls those employees out. So the other side of that, and I'll show you when I get into the SWIX, is you still want to check those numbers, because maybe when the data was pulled, you had a new employee, a new CCA, and they didn't have any work hours. But now when you pull the SWIX, they have work hours. You do want to give yourself credit for those. And then the last piece is the financial mapping for finance stations. And though you may not be aware, this is part of our systems of records. There's a form called a 9130. And that's if you got a larger city or larger office that has several finance stations, and their parent office is where they should get the credit. We want to make sure that mapping is correct. And I'll show you a sample of how that looks. If that mapping is not correct, they make that parent station may not be getting credit for those clerks at that finance station. So that's something we're working on now to make that cleaner and easier too. So any questions so far?
Yeah, we do have some.
Okay.
First one was, will the rural craft receive more on their SWIX, being that there's more to manage these days? And I think you probably covered that in number 1, right?
Yeah, there is more credit with now. The credit for the RCA and ARCs is 0.40. Before, you're right, and I know I feel your pain, because I was a postmaster and I had all these RCAs. I got no credit for them. Now you are getting the credit for those RCAs, and that's where my point too was. I know a lot of offices used to sort of keep their RCA staffing sort of thin, so to keep them happy and hungry. But you really should have the RCAs on every route, and this will help. Not only that, get get the staffing up to where you need to be, but you're also going to get credit for them now, which does help your SWIX.
Okay, and then there was a couple of questions about defining the large complex operations.
Okay, yeah, that again, don't get hung up on maybe the verbiage there, because generally we're going to look at, if you've got 15 or more supervisors, that's a complex operation. That's a large operation. It's really the driver for that is, have you earned 15 supervisors or more, you're going to get extras. So there's nothing to dissect into what's complex and what's large.
And then there's a question about, why is it actual versus earned? Currently, hiring is a nationwide issue, which negatively impacts the postmaster, who often is delivering the mail.
Yeah, that's nothing new. We've always had that position of, it's about who are you managing, who's actually there to manage and to supervise. That's the whole key, is if they're not there, you're not supervising them. So that's always been our position. That's why I say in the past, the model populated everybody on there, and you might run a SWIX and think, hey, I'm a supervisor, but by the time it got vetted and validated, maybe there was three CCAs that weren't at work, and then you didn't earn the supervisor. So to me, it's a better view to see it this way, to be conservative, than the other way. Say, oh, I got a supervisor, and it gets checked on, oh, I don't earn one. So this one's it's a little more accurate, but that is nothing new for us to validate the models using actual working employees. Now, the other side of that is your career employees. We don't take, they're not deducted if they don't have any work hours, because you have some that have been on extended leave and so forth. You get credit for all those regulars that are on your rolls. It's really just the pre-career that we're concerned with, that don't have any work hours.
Then there's a question, how is a hub office defined?
Well, what we do there, and that's a good question too, is we use the database Radar and operations. That's something that operations maintains. And so we pull that data. We're going to be pulling that every month. When they do the monthly update, that will be refreshed. So if your office has Sunday operations, but you didn't get credit on the SWIX or maybe on this April version, check with your operations at the district and confirm that they've got you as an indicator that you have Sunday operations. And that's how we pull that every month. And that's up to date. That's a better tool than we had in the past. So a lot of these enhancements on here are better than they were in the past, the way they feed and the way that they're up to date.
Okay, and then there's one last question here is, again, we're back to the 35-1 and the 15-1, but I think we got to make sure that people understand that, Chad.
Okay.
What it says here is some people think that's the number of employees to supervisor ratio.
Yeah, that's not the first. We've had several that have asked that question, and that ratio has always been there. It was always designed to assist the large installations, like I said, usually a PC's level office or maybe a 26 that had 35 or more supervisors. For example, like Houston's big. They earned 3 extra supervisors in the past because they had over 100 supervisors. Now that ratio changed or got lowered to 15-1, so that reaches down a little lower into some of your level 24 offices. I don't know that it gets into the 22 offices, but it definitely hits down to the level 22 offices and the 26 offices that before didn't earn an extra. But it's based solely on how many supervisors are you authorized. That's where you get that extra. It has nothing to do with the craft, clerks, carriers, roll carriers, custodians, any of those. None of the craft employees are part of that factor. Now, they indirectly drive that factor, right? Your employees are what's going to drive what you earn on a regular SWIX. This is just sort of an added piece to that SWIX model to say, hey, you're a large operation, you've got a lot of supervisors, it means you got a lot of duties, you're going to get extra because of that.
All right, that's what I have for questions for right now, so I'll turn it back over to you, Chad.
All right, thanks. Good deal. Good, appreciate it. Then this one, okay. I'll hit this real quick. When I talked about the mapping, and I wanted y'all to just see this. This is what that 9130 report looks like. It may look busy, but all I wanted everyone to see is if you got finance stations, like for example, this Revere Carrier Annex, they have 2 finance stations. They have Revere Finance and they have Beach Finance. Excuse me. And those are listed under the station in order. So those feed correctly. That means Revere does get credit for those clerks at those stations. The same thing with Arlington, East Arlington Finance and Arlington Heights Finance. They're assigned underneath Arlington Carrier, so they get credit for all those clerks at those finance stations. The one that stands out here is this Tufts University Finance Station. It's not assigned to any station. So it literally, those clerks, no one's getting credit for those clerks. So we've been working with the districts on the HR side to make sure they address those. So if you have a larger office and has finance stations, this is just something that needs to make sure it's in alignment, and the district may reach out, hey, where does this finance station belong, so they can get those in alignment. So I did want everyone to see what that looked like. Okay, so let me get off the PowerPoint for a second, and what I want to do now is do the SWIX. So let me show you how to pull that. If you're not sure with that, let me make sure. Can everybody still see my screen? Is it still showing up?
Yes.
Okay, I'll make sure we see the dashboard. Okay, so I'm on what I did is you want to go to get to the SWIX, you're going to go down to workforce planning. I'm on the blue home page, and I went down under HR, and I went to workforce planning, and then you'll get the dashboard, which is under the workforce analytics team. Here you'll go under staffing tools, and there's where all your models are. Since we're here, I'll show you that's where your PS 150's at. That's where your station manager model's at, and here's where our SWIX is at. So we're going to pull the SWIX, and there's 2 pieces on here. A lot of people don't see it, but there's a SWIX all at the bottom, And I'll touch on that after I do the SWIX. That's a really good tool to use to look at your operation. There's a real quick snapshot of what the operation looks like. And here's the regular SWIX. So what we do is just click. Anytime you're going to run a SWIX, I would say go to the dashboard, pull a new one. Don't save one and try to run it off. If it's old, because they do get updated. Occasionally we'll find things that enhance it or correct things, and they'll republish a new one. So always pull it from the dashboard if you're going to run a new SWIX. It'll take a second. I don't know about y'all, but my stuff's a little bit slower now. There we go. It works, but it's not always as fast as it used to be. Okay, so there's the SWIX. And I'll just show you real quick on this first tab. This first tab, the instruction tab, sort of give you some guidelines about how to pull the data. And we're going to do some updating on some of these instructional pieces. Our big focus was, let's get the SWIX updated, let's get it out and get it working, and then we'll come back and tweak some of these loose ends, like some of the verbiage on some of the this page and even the instruction guide. Those updates will be coming soon. And just for example, here's the side where you can see these are the larger offices that are actually earning extra supervisors. And for example, like Chicago earns 10 extra supervisors. That's how big they are. So just a quick reference, you can see where the offices are. They're usually all pretty large, but there's some that are not as big, and they earned one. So that's good for them. Okay, so that's this little instruction tab. Here's a SWIX. This is where the page you're going to work off of. And so what we do, first we have to do is we need to pull the CR32, and that's where I'm going to tie into this button here in a second. So what we'll do is go to web coins for that. And I'm going to bring that over so you can see that too a little bit. Okay, hopefully everything's still visible. So we just go to reports when you're in web coins. You go to CR32. And you can just drill this way, or I do search because I have so many offices to look at. I'm just going to pull up, let me see. I'll pull up an office that's got a couple of stations. I'm going to pull, like I know my area. I'm in Texas ones where I live, so I know the area. So I'm going to go with Tyler. So if anybody's on for Tyler, kudos. Okay, so I've identified the office, and all I have to do is hit execute. And it'll take a few seconds. It's not too bad. Okay, open. And if I have an Excel page open, I have to usually trigger it. So yes, go ahead and open it. Okay, this is the CR32. You don't have to do anything with it other than you got it pulled, it's open. And then we go back to the SWIX, and all you have to do is click this CR32 data button. When you click that, it's going to do the work in the background for you. Okay, so that finished pulling. So it told me it'll acknowledge a little splash screen, hey, the data is uploaded. So we're good there. Now what you have to do next, it knows the district because of that I pulled, but you have to pinpoint what your specific office is. And so when you pull this, you have to remember that it lists every office in alphabetical order. So when I go to Tyler, they don't put like the lead finance number first. It may be second or third, just depending on how the alphabetic runs on the station. So here's Tyler PO, because you can see Tyler Azalea Station, Tyler PO, and then Tyler South Tyler Annex. So you just got to always pull the one that says the PO. That's your lead finance number. That's what's going to start the SWIX, and if there's any substations or tabs or whatever. So we hit that, gives it just a few seconds, and it'll populate everything in. Okay, so now I've got the main lead finance number in, it's populated all my staffing, but there's other stations. So what you do is you go to this create tabs button, click that, and this, you may not can see it, there's a splash screen, you may not can see it on your side because I think it won't share it, but there's a button and you just say, hey, yes, make these tabs for these other stations. So I click that, and it gives me a heads up. It may take a few seconds to do it. It says minutes, it's usually seconds, it's usually pretty fast. So what it's doing now is it's gathering the data for each station and pulling them off that lead number and putting them into their own station tab at the bottom. And when you run a SWIX, if you run a large office, don't interrupt it. I recommend don't do anything else. Just let it run, let it do its thing so you don't create any kind of hiccups with the macros that run. Okay, that one was 22 seconds, pretty fast, pretty normal. So you can see it populated the tabs. I've got the Tyler PO, I got the Tyler South Annex, and I've got the Azalea Station. So that's how the tabs populate in. It's already pulled all of my staffing, so I can quickly look. If I go to the lead office, I can see they're earning 3 supervisors, they're authorized 3 supervisors, and they have 3 on the rolls. And then I can go to South Tyler and do the same thing. I can see they're earning 2, authorized 2, and 2 on the rolls. And here's the range to see where you're earning. So you can see they're at 6460, so they're right in the middle of the range up here. So they're not gonna. It's gonna take a little bit to grow, and it would take a lot to lose. So they're pretty stable where they are with 2. Azalea, the same thing. They're at earning 2, 2 authorized, and 2 on the rolls, and they're at the higher end. You can see they're at 7951. Now, when I said earlier, Joe, I wanted you to talk about vetting these. All this data here is pulled the 0 work hours out. If there are any, there may not be any, but if there are any, they've already been removed. But you want to double check that to make sure you are getting full credit for all your employees. So what you want to do there is go back to web coins. And I'm going to go to, now I'm going to the employee list. Okay, so and I'm going to open it up by each office. So I got Tyler. And what you want to do is go to your advanced options. And I like to add when they entered on duty. It helps me say, oh, it's a new hire. They're going to have work hours pretty soon. Or I got somebody that maybe I need to look at. I got employees that haven't work hours in 3 months. Maybe I need to look at why aren't they at work or something like that. Okay, so include those. Let me get it over there. Okay, so then I go back over here, and now I go to criteria selection. So I'll start with like city carrier. So I hit city delivery, city carrier, and I execute. Usually the initial runs a little slower. After that, it runs pretty good. So I can now see when you click work hours, I can quickly see who's got zeros. Okay, I've got 3 CCAs with 0 work hours. And you can see they were just hired, the 15th, the 15th. And one of them's been here a year, so we're not sure what's going on with that one. So they may have to research to say, why don't they have any work hours? Maybe we need to get them off the rolls. They may be taking up a spot. Okay, so with 3 CCAs with 0 work hours, they wouldn't get credit for 29. They should get credit for 26. So now we want to go to Tyler PO and see what credit they got on their SWICs for city carriers. Okay, and see it when he built the data for 0 work hour, it had 28 on there. So really what we would do is change that to correct it to whatever the number is. In this case, it's 26. Now it's not going to impact what they earn. I think they're still fine. Yeah, they're still earning 3 authorized. They're still good. And then we do the same thing with the clerks. So I'll go to the clerks, function 4, execute. And there's no 0 work hours. So I'm just going to look and see, make sure they're all in the right spot. So I got, if they have sales in their name, they're a window clerk. So I got 7 window clerks and 5 distribution clerks basically on that. So what I'm going to do is go look for that. I've got 7 and 5. So that data is good. Next, I want to look at the rural side of it. So I go rural, and on that one you hit rural and hit all. I hit full-time, and I want to hit the PTFs. Because somebody could have got converted and they've been moved over. So in this case, we've got 20. Again, you got some 0 work hours. We don't worry about those. You get credit for those on the career. So we got 20 full-time or PTFs, and the data's got 20. So it's okay. It's good there. So now let's go to the relief. So relief, you're going to hit ARC and relief. Execute that one. And now we've got, let's see if there's any 0 work hours here. So we got 2 there. So we should have 16 credit for the PRs and RCA, so 16. So let's go back to the SWICs. And it's got 15. So see, this time it was 1 under, so we're going to upgrade it to 16. And then so we got the corrected. And usually, and we always tell everybody, always put notes down here in the comments. Increased RCAs. There was 1 less 0 work hours, some kind of note to substantiate why the numbers changed. Okay. And then, excuse me. So now we validated that. We can double check the custodial part. And same thing, we just go up here, all maintenance. And that's 3. I think that was good. So that one's good. So everything's good. Everything's there. They've already got, this is getting credit for a Sunday hub. They have other clerk, which means they're going to have a secretary. And the custodian was 3. Okay. And then they also have contract station and CPU credit over here as 1. So they're good to go. The data's good. The switch is good. So after you would do that on every tab, and then when you go to save it, here's where we see a lot of problems when people go to save one, they don't save, they just hit save, and that's not the correct way. It won't export correctly. And if we try to open it, review it, it'll error and blank everything out. So you always have to remember, be on the lead tab, and you go down here and hit export. Use the export to all one book if multiple switch tabs exist. So I just click that. It's telling me what it's going to do, how it's going to name the file, so you can clearly see where it was at, what date it was run, and all that good stuff. So I hit yes there, and this will take it maybe a minute. It's not too bad. Again, that's relative to how big your unit is. If you've got just 1 tab, there's no finance stations, it's really fast. If you're at Dallas or New York, it's going to take a while. It's just a little bit longer, but not crazy long. Because they did, like I say, they've done some work on this to make it a little bit faster and a little bit smoother. I'm just going to let it finish, and then I'll show you. And where you save it, I create my own folders. I have folders, and I just save them there, SWIX or however you want to save those. So, because there could be a reason to review those later or something like that. So. Okay, and so you can see it asks, here's the name where you want to save it. For me, I have a bunch of them, so I'm just going to staffing model SWIX and save it. And that's saved. And see now it's the bottom's cleaned off any data tab or any running file tabs at the bottom. There was an extra tab when it was running. And so that one's good to go. Any questions on the SWIX? On how to read that. And it told me it took 88 seconds to run that. All right. Any questions on that part?
I've got a bunch of questions.
Okay. Okay.
But none on the specific running of it.
Okay, so running's good. Okay, that's good.
So
So
far.
that part's good. Okay, so yeah, if you want, we can, if they're switched related, we'll stay on them. I don't mind while we got it here in front of us. So I'll have to, if I need to reference a section or something, that's fine.
The question is, how do RMPOs or both finance and RMPO factor into the SWIX?
Okay, good question. And what they'll do now, and this one didn't, I can run another one to show you. They'll actually auto-populate here in this section here. In the past, finance stations or RMPO, they would list over here, and you have to manually go over here, do a drop down, find it, and click it. Now that's where I showed you that screenshot earlier about the mapping with all the arrows pointing up to the station. If that mapping's correct, then it feeds automatically right here for you. And if you get an issue with that and you're not seeing credit for something, definitely reach out to your local district, your district office, and say, hey, I'm not getting credit for a finance station or an RMPO. I haven't seen any errors with RMPOs. Those seem to be on the money. It's been more of the map, like I say, the mapping for your large cities where some of the finance stations didn't. They're either mapped to the wrong location or they didn't get mapped at all, and they didn't feed through. So we address those one-offs and fix those as they come across.
Okay, in one district, they've been told that positions wouldn't be posted until the new requisite review committee training was completed. Is that how it's going to work?
I'm not aware of that. I know are they talking about the new EA? If they're talking about the new EAS vacancy management tool that went live yesterday, they should be able to post. I'm not sure if that's what they're referencing. Because that's the only thing different there is you just got to know how to navigate that website versus the old website. It's pretty user friendly though.
And goes on to ask, will the station manager credits be affected with the new SWIX?
No, the station manager is completely separate. It's going to be, that's driven on really on deliveries and possibly, finance stations and things like that. It's not people driven, whereas the SWIX is really people driven.
Then there's a couple questions on the Amazon, the Sunday Hub issue, Chad.
Mhm.
When will we see the changes? One person here says that he's a hub and there was no change between March and April. And then the other question goes on to ask also, when will it take effect for a new hub? And also, how is it going to be affected with coupling during peak?
Yeah, good questions. Again, back to make sure they coordinate with their district and ensure that they're getting credit on that radar database, that they are a Sunday operation. And then that feeds to us because we don't know if you're a hub or you just have Sunday operations. Our part is to give you credit for those if you're open and running on Sunday. Now, the peak part of it, we'll have to address those probably one-offs, because what's going to happen is when you decouple, you may show as a Sunday hub, but we don't want to build that into your operation and say, hey, there's credit and now you're a supervisor. That would be a misleading credit. Same thing applies during peak when you have a lot of non-career temporary staffing, the CCA holiday term and the HCAs. Those don't get credited on the SWIX either because they're not permanent staffing. They're just there just through peak. So we would look at that if someone requested, and we'll see it. Someone will not realize that they're getting credit for Sunday Hub. They've just been decoupled for a month and a half or whatever, and they think they're going to earn a supervisor. We would validate that, and we would, obviously probably we wouldn't approve that. We would send that back.
Then, so someone asked, how do they fix if their finance units are not showing up under their office? That would be working with the district.
Yeah, work with your district HR and tell them, hey, my structure is not correct. I'm not getting credit for my finance stations. You don't have, you could use the phrase 9130 and that'll be in their environment. It'll make sense to them. But the main thing is to focus on letting them know that my structure, my mapping's not correct. And we've met with them too on the same information, so they're aware of that too.
Do 960 routes receive credit?
The phantom routes, those, no, you're talking about the ones that's covering like a limited duty employee. That's what it sounds like. I had one before, but those would not get credit. It's got to be an AMS it's got to be an AMS route. An auxiliary route would count, but not those phantom routes like a 960. Again, it's back to it's back to the people credit, because usually a 960 person, probably an LDC 67, and they wouldn't get credit anyway.
Yeah, there's still a couple of questions about authorized versus actual employees. And
okay.
So,
I'll touch on that real quick too. The way that authorized works is driven by what you're earning. For example, on the screen here, say they had earned 4 supervisors, but they're still only authorized 3. At that point, that's when the district would submit to say, hey, we need to increase the authorization from 3 to 4. And now you could create a 4th position, post it, and get it filled. That's where the authorization comes into play. We still look at earning, because you could have the other side of that. You could say an office is authorized 3, but they're only earning 2. In that case, you couldn't post that 3rd position because they're not earning it. So they're tied together, but the authorization is always adjusted at any point whenever that office earnings changes from what they are authorized. Hopefully that makes sense.
Any credit for CDS routes?
The CDS routes, there should be credit. I thought, I'll have to check on that one. I'm gonna make a note. I thought they fell under HCR, but I may not be right on that. Check on that one for you. So I'll get you I'll get that back to you, Dan.
When you earn another supervisor, what happens if you drop in staffing, for instance, lose RCAs or CCAs, and you no longer earn? We have to stay in the earned status for so many months before they will let us hire another one.
Yeah, okay, that's a good question, and I'll touch on that in a second too. Actually, I'll tie into that on the SWIX all. What it sounds like they're talking about is the ZOT. So let me just, I'm just gonna mess with this one to get someone into ZOT. So let's say they only have 20 carriers. Let's see if it does it. Okay, so for example, this sample here says this office is only earning 2. They're authorized 3. However, they're in this zone of tolerance. In the zone of tolerance, it's a 15% range, and it just means we know that staffing fluctuates up or down, but because you drop technically below earning it, you're in that zone. We're not saying you've got to take that supervisor and move a supervisor or lose a position yet. We're just saying you've got to monitor that staffing. Now, the side part of that is if you stay in ZOT for 12 consecutive months, yes, you would lose that authorization, and the supervisor would have to go somewhere else. So that's the part of the ZOT. It's just, there's some people confuse the ZOT on a SWIX with the ZOT on a postmaster. They're not the same animal. They're called the same name, but they're managed totally separate ways. This one just simply says the job is in jeopardy of being lost, but so I need to monitor my staffing. And in some cases, there's been loss of deliveries. As we see a lot of it up north. Sometimes cities lose a lot of growth, or the city's not growing, and they go into ZOT. But local knowledge says, hey, they're not adding anything. It's not coming back. So you don't have to wait 12 months if you want to address that. You could address it now and get ahead of it. Because the last thing we want to do is have somebody in a position that's not earned. We go through a RIF, and now they're going to get RIF. So that's the point of the ZOTs. Let you know you got it. There's an alert. Look at your staffing, make sure everything's credited right, and you may need to move an employee, or if you need to hire, make sure you're hiring correctly so you can make sure you still earn that position.
All right, then I think you've touched on most of the stuff that I've seen here. Where do you get credit for managing HCR routes, not CDS routes that deliver mail, but the routes that go out to other offices?
Here's your HCR route. You're talking about, now this is HCR routes that actually make delivery. This section down here. That's the credit for those. And that's again based on how many boxes you have, they get credit for those.
I think this is talking about a hub operation where
that's more of a cross dock operation. That's not tied to the SWIX. That's a different operation. That's tied to the plant or the level of the office.
Okay.
So they wouldn't apply on the SWIX. Yeah, I see a lot of questions in there, so I know you're scanning them, and we'll try to get all of them. I don't want to stay on it too long, but I can get them all as many as I can. While we're doing, let me switch over to the SWIX all, since we talked about the ZOT. So let me close this. And now here's the SWIX all. Remember, I'll do 2 things here. I'm going to show it because I already have it pulled. This is the SWIX all file down here at the bottom. So you can pull that one. And when you open that, this is what it looks like. I just got one open because I work in one all every day. And this is the SWIX all. It's the SWIX data. The same information's on it, except for it's horizontal. Okay, it just goes across. The same categories are there. How many carriers, rural carriers, RCAs, clerks, and so forth. And it pulls over here to the right. You can see real quick what you're earning. It shows you, here's your total SWIX, what you're earning, what's on rolls if you're in ZOT. And now on the right that's the ZOT. That's the one you got to watch. If someone's in there for 12 straight months, okay, here's one right here. It looks like I got to move my zoom. Okay, here's a prime example. This office right here. Hopefully they're not online. Sorry if you're on the line. But Russell Post Office has been in ZOT for 12 straight months, 12 consecutive months. So this authorization would need to be reduced to 0, and we would have to find a landing spot for that supervisor at that office. Because they haven't changed in 12 months. Okay. The other part we've done on this, another enhancement we've done, and this is interactive. Let me go back. The functionality doesn't change. So if you enter numbers, just like the regular Swix, it will update the staffing total. So you can take a look, say, oh wow, looks like I'm 2 people short. You can put it in there, say, okay, yeah, if I hire 2 more, I'm good to go. But another part is on the ZOT. This is an enhancement we added on here. Is right here. We've added this BZOT. And what this is, this means this office dropped below ZOT. And what we were seeing in the past is you would have a ZOT office and then it would be blank. So the system's looking at it as like, well, maybe they're out of ZOT. They got more stuff. They added more carriers or clerks, and they're bigger. They're earning the position. But that's not always. We couldn't really tell. So now we've added the BZOT. So you could have ZOT, 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 and then all of a sudden BZOT for 4 months, and then ZOT and so forth. That's literally going to be the same as being in ZOT for 12 straight months. It's not a free pass. I don't want you to think it's a free pass that I don't have to do anything. I'm safe. It's an alert that you do need to stay on top of that and get ahead of it so you don't lose your supervisor. And you're not doing your supervisor any justice if you just leave them in ZOT for a year, because you're going to lose them in a year from now. So, but that's the Swix all. You can drill it by lead or however you want to find it. It'll sort any way you want to go. So, did that make a little more sense too on the Swix all? Okay, silence. I'll go with that. All right, let me go back to the PowerPoint thing, because I don't want to take all your time, if y'all don't mind. Okay, so back to the Swix. Remember, this is the part about the mapping and getting credit for your finance stations. So that's what that report looks like. And now I want to touch on hard stops. Now they just went live with the new one, so the screenshots are not the same at all, but the result or the action is the same. So I just wanted you to know, when you get if you get a supervisor hard stop, what you have to do, usually you get a warning, hey, there's something blocking this from posting. And if a position's blocked from posting, again, these are screenshots that are I apologize, they're obsolete now. I'm gonna update these when we get when I can run through the new model. But here's the resolvements if you have a hard stop on a supervisor customer service position. This is usually driven for the district, but I want you to see it. We have them run the Swix for the entire group or the installation, and then that's going to tell them real quick, okay, is the data good? Do they earn it? Do they not earn it? And if they, again, make sure it's mapped correctly and 0 work hours are correct. If it earns the position, we tell them they can write us to the field staffing. They write us, hey, we need to get an override. This job's, we're showing that it's earned. We've got the Swix. The model's not, the dashboard wasn't correct. They send it to us. I review those. We look for those every day. And I'll review those. If it's good to go, I'll approve it. And I'll send them a message back saying, hey, I validated it. It's been approved. You can post the job. If I review it and it's not earned, I'll send back the same message. Hey, it's still not earned, and here's why. We'll explain why we didn't do the override and what steps they can take to try to address that to get it corrected and maybe get it posted next time. And so that's the in a nutshell, that's everything I had to share. I wanted you to see how the hard stop works and what to do to address those and what the Swix looks like. So we can go back to if there's any other. I know I seem like there's several questions. So if you want to wait, Dan, I don't mind taking them as many as you want to allow me. And then if you need to maybe send some in an email later, that's fine. I can address those too.
Why don't you go ahead and take another maybe 5 minutes?
Okay, yeah. If you want, did you want to run through them, or you want me to try to scroll through them? Either way.
Why don't you go ahead and scroll through them?
Okay, let me see what we got here. Okay, because I don't want to skip anybody. Okay, the top question to see is we haven't been able to add vacant positions with the new 0 work hour requirement. How long does it take to get the employee available to be counted? Okay, yes, on the vacant routes, you can add vacant routes in there, and that's a change we've done in the past. You couldn't add a vacant route if a CCA or a PC or a PSE was covering the vacant route. Okay, that was our policy in the past, and we've taken a different approach to that. You can still add routes in there up to and we haven't finalized, but I think we're looking at a time frame, a little bit broader time frame. Used to, we considered any job that was over 30 days stale. We're still working through the loose ends on what that range will be, but you no longer have to be limited because a route's vacant. It just went vacant 2 weeks ago. And even though a CCA is covering it, you could still add that route in there. We wouldn't take that credit away for you. You can always add them in there and then we'll vet through it. And if we don't allow one, we'll explain why, but that's a change. You're not going to get gigs for having a CCA or a PSE covering a vacant route or a vacant position. So you can add those on there. The other question, the other part was, I think, about 0 work hours. When do they get credit? It's going to be once they actually get hours populated in there, then they'll get credit for it. That's why I say vet that model. As you can see, when we saw those RCAs, it only had 15, and we found that there were 16. So somebody must have got hours that populated in, and they got credit for those. So that's all driven to how quick the model or the web client's going to update their work hours. And the workforce workforce page, that was back on the blue page under HR. It's towards the bottom. You'll see it under workforce planning there. Let's see. Okay, that's a similar question, looks like. Blue page, okay. Okay, let's see. I'm going to go backwards, try not to miss any of these. Should it take over 3 months to fix the finance unit mapping? No, that should not take that long. If you've got one, because in the past it may have taken longer because that was a manual file that had to be manually updated. And that's why we've gone to more of an automated system through that 9130 database. Everything, the ones we've checked have been pretty accurate. We're not aware of all of them because there's so many thousands to look at. That's why as we get one-offs or you see yours is not correct, push back to your district and say, hey, my mapping's not right. That should be a pretty quick fix. It should not take 3 months to fix that. Honestly, that should be pretty quick.
I don't know if you noticed, Chad, but Denise answered that one.
Oh, did she?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was trying to help him.
Thanks to Denise is on my team. She's part of field staffing. She's one of the analysts. So thanks, Denise, for getting on that. I didn't see that you had popped on there. I was just trying to go through them. So okay. Did we miss any questions? Denise may have taken care of several of them. We talked about HCR reps.
I think you pretty much answered all of them that we had. So
okay.
If there are any more that come up, everybody just send them through me, and I'll get in touch with Chad or Denise and get you an answer and get back to you. But don't start bombarding them with a bunch of questions on your own.
Yeah, please. Yeah, please. Yeah, I appreciate that, Dan. If it comes to sort of consolidated, and we'll give you one big response for several. So it'd be much better for us.
All right. Well,
okay.
With that, Chad, I want to thank you for your time tonight, for being on, Denise, for getting on also. We appreciate the support for us, for those out in the field with all of the questions and with all the changes going on and with staffing issues so many places. It's good to have this opportunity for people to get the information that they need right from the source. So with that, I will thank you, and I'm gonna share my screen, and then I'm gonna turn it over to Nicole.
Well, thank you, Dan. Wasn't that great? It was just, for me, who is definitely non-postal, but the information, and we're just so glad at FESA to be able to partner with UPMA to be able to get y'all information and good information. UPMA already does that for you, but this has been a great platform and we've enjoyed being able to do that. You're going to see on your screen a little QR code.
Can you
And
see it now, Nicole?
it was up there for a minute, but now it's gone. So,
Let me move it. Now is it on?
Yep.
There it is.
if you want to take your, take your little pincer and make it a little bit bigger, you can. And if you're on your phone, then just snapshot it, and then you can get the QR code on it a little bit later. But or you can just watch this again on your computer on the recording. But if you notice, there's kind of some flowers in the background. We've had some super blooms, and I'd like to think that FESA is about super blooming. So we take what you've got going on, and no matter if you're 19 or you're 58 or you're 65, we're here to kind of guide you through that. And everyone is so different. And so it's real important that you kind of take the time for you and do it on your own time. You won't see us in the postal stations, as we've talked about before, but the information, just like what you're going through here, you'll be surprised at what you know and you don't know. And we just appreciate being able to give that opportunity to you. And you'll see us out at some state conventions. I just got through, if you saw, I've got a little Mickey on, played golf with the Florida guys. We're here for the Florida State Convention, and we'll see you down the road somewhere, and we'll definitely see you in Denver. So Dan, thanks again for letting us be a part of this. We are honored so much.
We appreciate your sponsorship and your support, and the support of our members, Nicole, that you have given over the years and continue to give. So with that, we have almost reached the point of our hour that I said we would be done in an hour. Thank you, everyone, for getting on. Again, thank you to Chad and Denise for getting on from headquarters, and Nicole and FESA for their sponsorship. And with that, I will bid you all a fond good evening.
All right. Take care, Dan. Thanks.
All right. Take care,
Thanks,
everybody.
Chad. Bye.
Bye.